way to finish it off, to make it balance. This is how I like to think of it. Prayer is a weight, and fasting is also another weight. Both might be similar in their weights, but when added together, they double the power of what is going to happen. And so this is how I like to think about it. It produces a greater force against what, gravity helps to produce that force. And they both, as I say, they go hand in hand, just like that weight that will balance off whatever is happening there. And one of the most effective petitions you can raise is when you incorporate both at the same time. While prayer is very important and it's a heavy weight, let me say 5 pounds. Prayer plus fasting is 10 pounds. It is very strong, it produces a stronger weight. So in terms of our petitioning, it helps to make our petition stronger. But symbolically, I would have said that usually we pray every year, but we do not necessarily fast for that whole year, right? If I used to fast, well, I would have been the slimmest man alive. Perhaps. Surprisingly enough, there are people who starve and they're actually bigger than those who eat plenty food. Eh? That's a whole different story altogether, but that was just a joke. So praying is communication, while fasting is a different form of communication as well. Fasting lets God know that we are willing to sacrifice something for Him. When you come to church, do you come to church because you want something from God? No, it's fine if you do. Because I believe that the majority of us, we come because we want something from God. We love God, but we want something from God. When we love God, don't we want our children to be blessed? Don't we want Brother Tom to look bubbly on a Sunday morning?
Yes.
Right? Don't we want to be, financially blessed and so forth? We come to serve God because we love God, but we also want something. We also want something. All right? And so, fasting is one of the times, strangely enough, you may not agree with this, but one of the few times where we actually give back to God in a very great way, because we sacrifice something. When we worship here, we're not necessarily sacrificing something. We're giving something up, but we don't get a hurt from a sacrificial part of it. Maybe it's a bad example, but this is the example. There's a little difference between fasting and, as I say, worship. If you recall, before Jesus' crucifixion, the Bible shows us times when the disciples said that they were there for Jesus and would not leave him. All you remember that?
Yes.
Say, boy, Jesus, I'm with you, Jesus. Jesus, I am with you. And anybody ever tell you I have your back, boy? How much people have your back? How much people ever had a situation where somebody tell you, I have your back, boy? And then you find out later on, that person was the one stabbing you all in your back all over the place. Yes, it happens, right? It was very similar for Jesus, In fact, it was real for Jesus that way. We saw that when Jesus was captured, some of his own disciples, his closest, the people who were learning from him, greater than even he would go out to evangelize, but the people that he would evangelize to, there's only one time they would get to hear Jesus, or 2 times or 3 times. These were the people who hear him all the time. Lots of knowledge, all right? But it is not knowledge, it is the practice of that knowledge. And we see that some of the disciples claimed, when he was captured, of course, when Jesus was captured, that they did not know Jesus. They did not know him. So praying is like saying something unto God and fasting. But fasting is the symbolic representation of acting in faith to prove that you mean it. So fasting is a little bit different from praying. You realize that? Which is why God mentions fasting legitimately as something separate to pray. Make sense? I know it sounds obvious, but this is things that we need to remember. We need to remember the depth of why these things are happening. So this is a symbolic representation of acting in faith to prove that you mean it. In other words, we act in faith. I believe in Jesus, but I'm going to do something to show that I believe in Jesus. We're not going to start wars with other religions. We're going to fast to show that we prove to God that we believe in Him. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We're giving something up sometimes. And this, of course, is just one example. People these days, not all, but many, want one answer. But that is the great fallacy of today's world, you know. We often do not only do something for one reason. We do for many reasons sometimes. Think about it. There are situations where we do things for multiple reasons. Anybody agree with that or disagree? Fasting is just like that. As I said, the Swiss Army knife. Fasting is the act of proving one's faith in an overall sense to God. It shows God that we, as, believe it or not, selfish human beings, are willing to give up something, to give up one of our primal instincts, a necessity to eat, to consume, so that we can request something from God or receive something from Him. You know that because, you know, fasting, the first thing you say is, oh gosh, boy, I can't eat my meat, I can't eat my ham, I can't eat my thing. But it is to give up your primal instinct. One of your primal instincts, which is to eat. You have to eat, right? Everybody don't like to eat yet?
Yeah.
My hand raised first. I love to eat. But it is to give up that to get something from God. But we should also be fasting to show Him that we love Him. The same way we praise and worship, the same way we pray and we say, I love you, Lord, this is a tribute unto God. And sometimes you need to tribute something unto Him. But in order to tribute something from to Him, sometimes you have to give up something of your own. Very rare, other than our actions, does God ask us to give up something of ourselves. In terms of a physical thing, He asks us to change our lives, but very rare does He ask us to give up something. In fact, He doesn't really ask us to give up to that fasting. We choose to do that to show Him that we love Him. You hear what I'm saying? He doesn't even say, well, you have to fast. God doesn't say you have to do this, you have to do that. He said, but you have to choose to live a good life. You have to choose to fast. You have to choose to pray, or you can don't pray at all. It's your choice at the end of the day. So it is your choice that will determine how God answers what we want, what we need, maybe what we don't even need. This is all a part of, in this case, fasting in this context. This is not the only reason and the meaning for fasting. It is just one of the more stronger reasons why we as Christians fast. So if you might be wondering why you're fasting, I hope that you will get a renewed knowledge of why we fast. And of course, I have also mentioned that our lives are filled with the battle between the flesh and the spirit. How many of you were here last year when we spoke about the flesh and the spirit? Anybody? All right, very good, very good. And when the flesh, which is the carnal man, Dad used to always talk about the flesh, but the flesh, you would always say, but the flesh. And when you're talking about the Israelites, you say, but the flesh. What the flesh does, the carnal man, when that flesh is strong, it usually dampens out the spirit in battle. It is the great paradox of being a human being, the great paradox of being a Christian. Because you always have the flesh, when you're alive that is, and you always have the spirit. And they don't really mix too well, even though you can't see your spirit. Even though you can't see your spirit, you think your spirit realm mix inside of you. But the true spirit is in battle with that flesh. It is in battle with that flesh. Well, I know about that because I always say, every time I pick up that piece of ham and I eat it, something inside of me just tell me, boy, you overdoing that ham. And yet still the flesh is win. Flesh win for Christmas. Yeah? All the ham and so forth, the flesh was in control. Or I shouldn't say the flesh was in control, but the flesh had a greater, the flesh win. Let me put it that way. The flesh had a greater strength than the spirit at that point in time. But you see that we have to sometimes make an effort in a different way, right? It is a great paradox in a believer's life and for the Christian. So, good, because you know that. The fact that you know that means that when temptation comes away, you could probably try to get away from it, especially for the fast, right? You will know that during this fast, maybe you might crave something you wasn't supposed to eat. But you will remember that the battle is happening while we're fasting. That battle for that spirit to try and raise itself up stronger. Alright? And it is, of course, that the battle between that, the flesh and the spirit, it is perhaps even the downfall of man. Would you say so? It is when the downfall of man has occurred. The challenge to maintain the flesh, because we have to feed it, we have to bathe it, we have to clean ourselves, we have to, whatever is that primal instinct that we have to maintain it. And the challenge of also maintaining the spirit. At either points in this example, note carefully, one must give up one to be with the other. It is glass. It is like a glass that you have. Half with water and half with oil. And sometimes you can try to shake it up, but they can never really mix 100%. And no matter what you do, you still end up giving up one for the next. You could never have the whole oil, a whole glass with oil. You can never have a whole glass with water. That is what I mean. That is the flesh and the spirit. And you know, I'm not so sure that many Christians understand this. You say, Pastor, you're so negative. But you see, through your actions and your choices, you will know whether flesh is at play, whether spirit is at play, whether they are at battle, which I believe is a good thing when they are at battle. Because you might see someone who is not so absolutely stable, they're not too sure to make which choice to make. That is still a better choice than to make a choice of the flesh only. You say, but that man confused, boy, he don't know. That is still a better choice to be in than to say, look, I'm going to do only what the flesh tells me to do. So, you know, if you have people around you that are confused, help them. Give them a little good word and see how the seesaw will go, either for the flesh or for the spirit. Alright? Clarify things for them so that their spirit can also make a good choice over the flesh sometimes. And of course, we are speaking about sacrifice. Anybody here like sacrifice? The only time I really feel like I like sacrifice is when Jesus died on that cross for me. Sacrifice is hurt. It's hurt plenty. Well, when I use the word sacrifice, I'm not talking about they give you a child $5, you know. You have a whole $100 remaining. That's not sacrifice really. I mean, it's a small amount of sacrifice. It's not the sacrifice I'm talking about. Sometimes it's sacrifice, it hurts a little bit more than that. Where you might have to give the child $100 and you end up with none in your pocket. That is sacrifice.
Yes, it is.
That is sacrifice. So that's the sacrifice. In the sacrificial form of fasting, we fast so that the flesh of man would be weaker. I would have preached about this before. And here I have to pause, because I believe that some people translate this into punishment. When you think about fasting, do you think it is punishment? No? Good. It's not really punishment. It's not supposed to be punishment. Sometimes I get the impression that some people fast to punish themselves. But I don't know, I don't think that is what it is called for. And while sacrifice can hurt, I do not believe that God wants us to push ourselves to an irreversible extent. Amen this morning? We're going into fasting this morning. You're going in because we love Him this morning. In the process of loving Him, make good decisions still. We don't want nobody getting sick with fasting. Hear what I'm saying? Because I don't think you're really good on bed when you could be good doing something for God otherwise. Amen. Wisdom. Using that wisdom into something good. Understand what I'm saying as we go into fast? Therefore, in fasting, it is not about the absolute destruction of our body, since this would also go against God's love for us. 50-50. Right? And it will also go against His rules about life. If you could make an entire fast, by all means, you could do it, no problem. But if you know that you cannot do it, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. So this is why fasting, so the sacrifice, as I say, is not to kill oneself. You don't have to punish yourself. Right? God died for our sins so that we could be reconciled back unto Him. You're not going to punish yourself. The sacrifice is not to kill oneself. This is why fasting is not always the entire removal of the meal, but sometimes the removal of something that is important to you. I see fasting differently. In the dictionary, fasting talks about giving up food. But I believe that fasting is also giving up other things other than food. You know what I did? You don't have to do this, but you know what I started to do recently? I gave up Facebook. You see what is important to me? It might not be important to you, but I give it up. I start to realize something. I say, what is God more important to me than Facebook? Yes. I say, do I like to go on Facebook? Yes. Will I give it up? Yes, I will give it up. That's why this is quiet. Quiet. May I try to log in, sir? Because I know when I log in, I can see something, a notification, and then I want to check it, and I'll get myself studying something else when I should have been studying God. In this case, I've given up something to get something back from Almighty God this morning. I just say Facebook, don't feel like saying Facebook because I said, anything that you have that you love, you can give up just for a little bit of time. Not your children, eh? You don't neglect your children, You can't give up. You love your children, but don't neglect them, eh? Make wise choices. You could give up something and see if God is going to work more in your life this morning. That could be your fast. So your fasting is not stringently on food, but today we're talking about food. Just remember that it doesn't always have to be food. It could be something else that you love, you could give up sometimes. Alright? So in theory, while fasting is usually the removal of the primary instinct of eating, one can theoretically fast from other things, but we're going ahead with the food and drink. So it would be unwise for a diabetic, for example, to stay away from all forms of food for the day. Wouldn't you say so? Anybody who does eat, and if they don't eat, they feel trembly, you're going to have to be careful if you're fasting. I wouldn't encourage you to not fast, but I will encourage you to be careful on how you fast. You will have to consume something so that you don't get trembly. The fact that you're getting trembly might be that your sugar is running low, so that could also be a sign, or a pre-diabetic sign, which maybe fasting might also help, because you could say, God, help me. But at the same time, we don't want people fainting and falling down and that kind of thing. Alright? And so for this reason, as Christians, once again, we need to act in that wisdom accordingly. Therefore, in this period of fasting, you can decide your sacrifice. You choose your sacrifice this morning. There's always, mamas tell me, but we need to tell them what type of fast we're doing and so forth. And that's true, it's good for the leadership to say. And I think last year some of us did the Daniel fast. Some of us went a little further than the Daniel fast, if I'm not mistaken. So you can decide that. It would be nice if everybody could at least start with the Daniel fast and give up whatever else more that they want. So usually The Daniel fast is with fruits and vegetables and so forth. You give up meat and that kind of thing. But if you want to give up more, but do it in wisdom this morning. And do it knowing, that you love God and it is not to destroy yourself in the process of it this morning. So therefore, in this period of fasting, you decide your sacrifice. And you see, would you decide in your sacrifice? You, as a person, individually, would have made a choice unto Almighty God. You wouldn't be listening to who say what and I say this. You decide your sacrifice this morning. But give up something to gain something from God this morning. So a sacrifice is a signal to God of your petition and love for Him. At all times, in any form of fasting, please ensure, whether this is entire fasting or not, please ensure that you hydrate your body with water to avoid bodily harm. I remember Pastor Rabbi used to always say that. Back then, I used to hardly ever fast. But now it's different. Whether you stay away from certain types of food, or the strong body that stay away from everything entirely, again, I would discourage you entirely staying away from food unless you know that your body can handle this one. I know some of you probably can handle it. I can handle it, but I don't know how much days I can handle it for. So I was going through some of the reasons for fasting and said that it doesn't have to be only one reason. We saw that Jesus fasted so that a spirit could be removed from a boy. And without that fasting, spirit would not have been removed. Alright? But I want to let you know that prayer and fasting is a solution to many different things. In this case, it was the removal of a bad spirit, but it may not apply to your life. Maybe you're a Christian, you don't have a bad spirit, you don't have a problem like that. You can pray and fast for an unmet need in your life. This is what praying and fasting is. We all need many things, and in the case of the situation with that story, it was a father with a boy that had a bad spirit in him. This is the story. So we take it literally that it was to cast out demons. But that father didn't seem to know about fasting. And when that father had a challenge, the challenge could have come in a different way. It didn't only have to be a bad spirit. It could have been something else that the father needed and couldn't have. And so that is where fasting comes in. So fasting comes in where we need some need that needs to be met this morning. So you have a need this morning, maybe you, it could be maybe even your family, maybe somebody else who's out there that you know. You could fast